Sandy says read, and welcome to the channel. We are going to do a couple of things with today's book review. This is a review of Rapunzel's Prince by Jessica Kaye. Stuff falling out of it. Yeah, here we go. Let's see if I can get the glare off of it for you guys. No, there's a huge glare. Oh, you guys, it's a very shiny book, so there is a glare that I can't seem to get rid of. You guys, I'm just going to wave the book at you. Okay, can you see it? There, Rapunzel's Prince by Jessica Kaye. You can see the tower with her hair and the shadow of our prince, the silhouette of our prince, Prince Brendan, as it were. Now, this is an indie book spotlight, but it is also a fractured fairy tale. We are going to be talking about it like a fractured fairy tale. Now, I don't know. I probably shouldn't call it a fractured fairy tale as much as I should call it a retelling of a fairy tale, because let me explain why. Let me explain. Okay, this is a companion book to Rapunzel by Jessica Kaye. And did I write this down for you guys? I think I did. Yes, I did. Okay, Jessica's first novel was Rapunzel, and it was published in 2012. Then she prepared this story as a companion novel to that story. This one was published in 2014. So let me give you the specs. The specs are Rapunzel's Prince by Jessica Kaye, copyright 2014. It's 135 pages. Takes you no time at all to read through this thing. You guys, I think it took me an hour. It was that quick. First person point of view, which I wasn't thrilled that it was in first person, but it worked, okay? It's in past tense, which is my jam. That worked just fine. It has a very young adult feel to it. Brendan, I mean, he's of marrying age, but he is, the crown prince of Kingdom, but he has an arc that he goes through, and he starts out with a very Luke Skywalker vibe to him. He's just a little bit whiny when we first meet him because his mother, the queen, is like, hey, I've arranged for you to get married to this chick, Danita, over here. And he's like, what? No, I don't want to get married. How dare you arrange my wedding for me without, without my approval, without checking with me? How dare you? And he like storms out of the breakfast room or the luncheon room, and he goes off to, saddle up his horse and go out riding. And, the person who's getting his saddle ready for him is annoying him. So he goes walking instead. It's that kind of character when we first meet him. But he does go through an arc, and he learns how to be more mature, and he learns how to be more accepting of people and more, I guess, more aware of other people's feelings. And he goes through this arc as we get to know him better. And I'm like, good for him, good for Brendan. But it is a very young adult arc for a character to go on. And I saw that those young adult themes happening throughout the book. So I would say this would be a good young adult novel for a young adult to read. I would recommend it as such. It's also a good retelling of the fairy tale from the prince's point of view. And when I met Jessica Kaye at the SyFyFlorida Convention, the SyFyFlorida event in May, it was May, right? Yes, I'm still in the month of May when I'm filming this, you guys. May 17th, when I met her at her table, she was telling me about, the first book, Rapunzel, and then this one. This is the one I gravitated toward. I mean, it's purple. Come on. So I gravitated toward this. I'm like, ooh, Rapunzel's Prince. That would work out great for this fractured fairy tale thing that I'm doing on my channel. And she really did try to steer me toward getting Rapunzel either first or in addition to this. But I was running out of money, so I just bought this one. But I'm glad that I did get this one. And it does kind of give us a hint of what Rapunzel went through. When we get to the end of the story, we do have a hint of what she went through. And when I redo the back cover, you'll kind of get a hint of what Rapunzel did for herself. Okay. And we'll talk about that when we get into the review and discussion. Let's read the back cover together. In Jessica Kaye's Rapunzel, the fabled long-haired girl cuts her hair and leaves her tower to search for her lost prince. Along the way, she finds the life she always wanted and ends up saving a kingdom in the process. But what was the prince doing while Rapunzel was rescuing herself? The parallel novel, Rapunzel's Prince, tells us all about his adventures as he searches the world for the girl with impossibly long hair. And that's the story we have. Now let's divide this review and discussion into two parts. We're going to first look at the Grimm's fairy tale of Rapunzel, and then we'll get back to this review. We'll put timestamps below, so if you don't want to sit through the Grimm's fairy tale reading, you don't have to. But you guys, this is Fractured Fairy Tales. Let's look at the source material, or at least some of the source material. As you guys may know, the brothers Grimm did not originate Rapunzel. They didn't originate most of those stories that they compiled. They got those stories from other sources and put them all together into a compendium for us to have over the years. The original, and hang on, I've got it here on the screen. Rapunzel is a German fairy tale, but it began with a French fairy tale of Percinet, and that was by Charlotte Rose de Caumont de la Force. And I'm sure I just butchered her name because I don't speak French, but that was one of the fairy tales that the brothers Grimm gathered and put together to make Rapunzel. But that wasn't even the first. Originally it was a Italian fairy tale of Petrocinella by, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the first name, but Basile. Okay, so basically we have this character who has transformed over the years. The story has transformed over the years, and each retelling of it, different things were added or removed or changed or fluxed, as you will, okay? And even when we look at Rapunzel's Prince, which Jessica put together, some things got morphed and changed within this narrative. And we'll talk about that when we get to that portion of this review and discussion. But first, let's look at in Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. And I shared with you guys before what book we're reading from here, but let me give it to you again here in this video. Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales, translation by Margaret Hunt. This is the Canterbury Classics, an imprint of Printers Row Publishing Group, and this particular book was printed in 2011. It was published in 2011. You can see the cover there. Doesn't that look foreboding and dark and gloomy, as a Grimm's fairy tale book should? Okay, pages 44. So this is 44 through 46 of a pretty big volume of stories, but I still don't want to trounce all over the copyright by reading every single word of this story. I will read some, I will paraphrase some, and then I'll read some more so that we don't completely trounce all over their copyright, okay? Copyright is a big deal to me as an author myself. All right. There were once a man and a woman who had long in vain wished for a child. At length, the woman hoped that God was about to grant her desire. These people had a little window at the back of their house from which a splendid garden could be seen, which was full of the most beautiful flowers and herbs. It was, however, surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared go into it because it belonged to an enchantress named Dame Gothel, who had great power and was dreaded by all the world. One day, the woman was standing by this window and looking down into the garden when she saw a bed which was planted with the most beautiful rampion, Rapunzel, and it looked so fresh and green that she longed for it and had the greatest desire to eat some. This desire increased every day, and as she knew that she could not get any of it, she quite pined away and looked pale and miserable. Then her husband was alarmed and asked, "What ails you, dear wife?" "Ah," she replied, "if I can't get some of the rampion, which is in the garden behind our house, I shall die." The man, who loved her, thought, "Sooner than let your wife die, bring her some of the rampion yourself. Let it cost you what it will." So one evening, when it's coming close to dusk, he climbs over the wall and he gets some of the rampion and brings it to his wife. "How dare you," said she with an angry look. This, of course, is the enchantress. "To descend into my garden and steal my rampion like a thief. You shall suffer for it." "Ah," answered he, "let mercy take the place of justice. I only made up my mind to do it out of necessity. My wife saw your rampion from the window and felt such a longing for it that she would have died if she had not got some to eat." Then the enchantress allowed her anger to be softened and said to him, "If the case be as you say, I will allow you to take away with you as much rampion as you will, only I make one condition. You must give me the child which your wife will bring into the world. It shall be well treated, and I will care for it like a mother. The man, in his terror, consented to everything, and when the woman gave birth, the enchantress appeared at once, gave the child the name of Rapunzel, and took it away with her. Of course, Rapunzel grows up to be beautiful and lovely. When she was 12 years old, the enchantress shut her into a tower, which lay in a forest, and had neither stairs nor door. But quite at the top was a little window. When the enchantress wanted to go in, she placed herself beneath it and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel had magnificent long hair, fine as spun gold, and when she heard the voice of the enchantress, she unfastened her braid tresses, wound them round one of the hooks of the window above, and then the hair fell 20 ells down, and the enchantress climbed up by it. So a few years later, it happens that a king's son is riding through the forest. Then he heard a song which was so charming that he stood still and listened. This was Rapunzel, who in her solitude passed her time in letting her sweet voice resound. The king's son, of course, wants to climb up to her. He doesn't know what to do, so he lays in wait, and he sees the old enchantress come by. And he hears her cry, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel lets down the braids. The old woman goes up, and the king's son is like, that's how you do it. So after, the next day, when it began to grow dark, he went to the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Immediately, the hair fell down, and the king's son climbed up. At first, Rapunzel was terribly frightened when a man such as her eyes had never yet beheld came to her. But the king's son began to talk to her quite like a friend, and told her that his heart had been so stirred that it had let him have no rest, and he had been forced to see her. Then Rapunzel lost her fear, and when he asked her if she would take him for a husband, and she saw that he was young and handsome, she thought, "He will love me more than old Dame Gothel does," and she said yes, and laid her hand in his. She said, "I will willingly go away with you, but I do not know how to get down. Bring with you a skein of silk every time that you come, and I will weave a ladder with it. And when that is ready, I will descend, and you will take me on your horse." They agreed that's a good idea. Let's see. So he came to her every day. After the woman left, he came every day. And then one day, Rapunzel says something stupid. "Tell me, Dame Gothel, how it happens that you are so much heavier for me to draw up than the king's son. He is with me hardly a minute." "Ah, you wicked child," cried the enchantress. "What do I hear you say? I thought I had separated you from all the world, and yet you have deceived me." In her anger, she clutched Rapunzel's beautiful tresses, wrapped them twice round her left hand, seized a pair of scissors with the right, and snip, snap, they were cut off, and the lovely braids lay on the ground. And she was so pitiless that she took poor Rapunzel into a desert, where she had to live in great grief and misery. On the same day that she cast Rapunzel out, the enchantress fastened the braids of hair which she had kept onto the hook of the window, and in the evening, when the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," she let the hair down. The king's son ascended, but he did not find his dearest Rapunzel above, but the enchantress, who gazed at him with wicked and venomous looks. "Aha!" she cried mockingly. "You would fetch your dearest, but the beautiful bird sits no longer singing in the nest. The cat has got it, and will scratch out your eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to you. You will never see her more." The king's son was beside himself with pain, and in his despair he leapt down from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorns into which he fell pierced his eyes. Then he wandered quite blind about the forest, ate nothing but roots and berries, and did nothing but lament and weep over the loss of his dearest wife. Thus he roamed about in misery for some years, and at length came to the desert where Rapunzel, with the twins to which she had given birth, a boy and a girl, lived in wretchedness. He heard a voice, and it seemed so familiar to him that he went towards it. And when he approached, Rapunzel knew him and embraced him and wept. 2 of her tears wetted his eyes, and they grew clear again, and he could see with them as before. He led her to his kingdom, where he was joyfully received, and they lived for a long time afterwards, happy and contented. Okay. Now that prince in that story falls out of the tower, and his eyes are pierced so that he cannot see, and he has to wander aimlessly and blind until he like stumbles upon Rapunzel. There is a bit of a parallel with that in Rapunzel's prince. I mean, our Prince Brendan doesn't climb up into the tower and then fall out and pierce his eyes and wander blindly, but we do have this wandering through other kingdoms that takes place in this story. So that parallel holds true. Our Prince Brendan does go looking for Rapunzel. He's not wandering blindly, but it does feel as if the poor guy is wandering almost aimlessly. And he and his two advisors, his advisor Sebastian and his bodyguard Philip, they do just sort of wander out like, okay, you know what? I bet she might be in such and such kingdom because they have like these caves and stuff, and she might be in one of those. So they go there. There's another kingdom where they have tall towers with their architecture, and they're like, you know what? She might be in one of those. Let's go there. So there's sort of an aimlessness and sort of a plan, but I don't know. There's a lot of aimlessness happening, and this idea in the fairy tale that he just stumbles upon Rapunzel someday. That kind of holds true also in Jessica's story. The Prince Brendan, he just kind of stumbles upon her someday. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. I'm basically going to be giving away a lot of spoilers about this, but you guys, it's Rapunzel. We all know the story. We all know the happily ever after. We all know these things. So I'm going to be giving some spoilers in what I say about it. So buckle up. Here we go. Let's talk about our characters. Brendan is our prince, and he is of marrying age. The queen is our queen, the Queen of Kingdom, and she would like to see her son get married. So she's manipulating that to happen. We have the king of Kingdom, and he's just kind of a side character. Bless his heart, he doesn't really have much to do in this story. Yeah, he's just kind of there. I mean, he's got to be there. He's the king. Then we have Rosemary. She is a princess, and she is Brendan's younger sister. He also calls her Buttercup, which I thought was a nice touch. Then we have Danetta. She is the lady that the queen wants Brendan to marry. And she's not a princess. I don't get the idea that she's a princess. She's just a lady of high standing. And the queen would like for Brendan to marry her because she's of high standing. She's a quality woman. Then we have the old woman named Granny Aunt. This is the old woman who has Rapunzel up in a tower. And in this story, in this companion to Rapunzel, we don't really get the full background on Granny Aunt because we're not in Rapunzel's point of view. We're in Brendan's point of view. So we don't really get to see who Granny Aunt is, where she came from, whether she's an enchantress or just an old woman. We don't know because we're not in Rapunzel's book. We're in Brendan's book. Then there is Rapunzel. Of course, she's the beautiful woman up in the tower who can sing beautifully and catches Brendan's attention. Then we have Sebastian. He's a servant, basically. He is a servant for the kingdom and for the royal family, and he is devoted to Brendan, and he helps Brendan. And we have Philip. He is a bodyguard for Brendan. His job is to keep Brendan safe in the castle when Brendan goes out running errands and stuff, and when Brendan wants to go on this journey to find Rapunzel. We have a character named Princess Adeline. Princess Adeline is the daughter of King Michael, and they live in a village in a kingdom called Letts, and it's just like next door to our kingdom, which I guess I didn't write that down. You guys. Whoops. Then we have Princess Roxanne. She is the daughter of King Nicholas, and they live in Pragen. And this Pragen is this kingdom that is stinky. There's something going on with their sewer system that is not right, not good. And so when we go to that kingdom, it smells terrible. The air is thick with just sewage and toxins, and everyone has like a handkerchief that they hold in front of their face to like keep the toxins out of their lungs. And so Brendan does become ill when he's there. And so the way we get away from Pragen is because he becomes ill, and they're like, we got to get out of here. Yeah. Then we have King Salen, and he is the king of Taraba. And this is a much nicer, less toxic environment when we go to Teraba. Now, these three kingdoms that I mentioned are important because they are places that Brendan goes to when he's searching for Rapunzel. We all know the story. We just read the fairy tale. Brendan discovers her in the tower. He does, he figures out how to get her to let her braid down. He climbs up and he's like, hi. She's surprised. He talks to her and calms her down, and they become friends, and he decides he's madly in love with her, and she loves him too. So it's a lovely little romance, and he's going to propose to her and ask her to marry him. On the day that he's going to do that, he calls out for her to let down her braid while Granny Ant is up there in the tower. And Granny Ant is like, what's going on here? I don't think so. And she tells Brendan, like, Brendan leaves. When he comes back and he's like he's calling up to Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. I'm so sorry that things got out of hand yesterday. Let me come up. Let me talk to you. Granny Ant she's there on the scene, and she's like, hey, you moron. I took her away. You will never find her. She's going to suffer terrible things because of you, and it's all your fault, and you suck. And she grabs hold of Brendan, and Brendan is like, you let me go. I am the crown prince of Kendom, and you better not be touching me, and you better tell me where she is. And Granny Ant is like frightened by this, and yet she doesn't quite believe that he is the crown prince, but she's frightened enough, and she's like, well, I don't care who you say you are, you will never see Rapunzel again. And off she skitters into the woods. So he believes that Rapunzel is gone. He believes that he has lost her, and he cries out for her, and she doesn't respond. So he believes, the old woman, that Rapunzel's been taken away. So he wants to find her. Of course. I mean, he loves her. He's got a ring that he wants to put on her finger. He wants to put a ring on it. So he goes back to the castle. He's devastated. He finds Sebastian. And he's like, I've got to go. I've got to go find this woman. Here's what's been going on. I'm in love with this gal. She's gone now. I've got to go find her. And Sebastian's like, okay, I get it. Let's bring Philip in, your bodyguard. So Philip and Sebastian are going to assist him. They're going to go with him on his travels to find this woman. And that's where we get this idea of, okay, how about let's try looking in Let's go to that kingdom first, because they've got like these caverns and things, and she might be in one of those caverns. Like, what? Why would we think that? But okay. And then when they're in Let's and they meet Princess Adeline she's crazy. She's just a crazy chick. Okay. And she like challenges Brendan to duels and to jousting and the whole bit. And Brendan is like, what? You're a girl. Why are you swinging a sword around? What's going on? She's like no one he's ever met before. And she tells him she never wants to get married. She never wants to have a husband who will take her inheritance from her. She wants to inherit the throne after her father passes, and she will be the queen of Let's, blah, 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 right? This is her goal in life. She doesn't want to get married to anyone, but she kind of sort of does. She kind of sort of is after Brendan, but not saying as much. Okay, so they're in Let's, and one night these vagabonds, the barons from around Let's, attack the castle. And so Adeline is like, you can get out, go this way, take Sebastian with you, and Philip, who's been out looking for Rapunzel, will meet you on the road. So Sebastian and Brendan go out, and they're going to go to their next stop, which is Pragen. And Philip knew they were going to Pragen next. That was going to be the next stop on the list if they didn't find Rapunzel in Let's. Well, they don't find her. So they're on their way to Pragen. And on the way to Pragen, they start to smell it. I mentioned that it's just toxic. The air is just toxic and gross. And they start to smell it on the way there. It's just disgusting. Well, they get there and they're just weary from being on the road, walking all this way. And no one believes this is the crown prince of Kendom. I mean, he looks terrible. He looks like a vagabond at this point. No one believes he is who he says he is. And there's enough mercenaries and loiterers around the village and the town and the kingdom that Sebastian is telling him, hey, shut up. Stop telling people who you are. Don't tell people who you are. Let's just get into the king's court, and then you can tell the king who you are, okay? These people are going to harm you. They're going to take everything you have, everything you own. And in fact, in one place, one of these loiterers in front of like this wall, it tells Brendan, give me all your money. And they're going to beat him up. If he doesn't, they're going to probably murder him. And so Sebastian gives the guy a pouch of money. And after they get away from them, Brendan is like, you fool. you gave him all our money. Why did you do that? Because now we have no money. And Sebastian is like, Your Highness, how do you think I'm that foolish? Do you think I would really give away all of our money? How long have you known me? And I have traveled before. I am older than you. I take care of you. I gave him a pouch of money. The rest of our money is in other places hidden on my person. I would never. And trust me. You've got to learn to trust me. And that's one of the lessons that Brendan is learning as he goes on this arc, as he becomes a more mature individual. He's learning many lessons from Sebastian the servant. You guys, that was a really important message that was getting through in this young adult narrative, that just because Sebastian was the servant didn't mean he was subservient all the time. He had many lessons that he was teaching Brendan, some of them overt like that. I mean, he just flat out said, You've got to trust me. I am older than you. I have traveled more than you. I have this knowledge. Trust me. I mean, that was overt. He said it. But there were other times when the messages and the information was just kind of leaking through. And I liked that. I liked the way Jessica did that. I liked the way she used Sebastian as a character who was, lesser in station than the prince, but more in knowledge and more in worldliness and more in intelligence and maturity. And the prince learned from that and was willing to learn from that. I liked that. I liked that a lot. Obviously, I'm talking about it a lot. Okay, so we get to Pragan and we do get to the king's presence. We do get in front of the king, and the king is like, Oh my gosh, it's you. It really is you, Brendan. Come on in and let's get you cleaned up and let's get you some food. And so he's with King Nicholas and telling him, Hey, I'm looking for, stuff. I'm looking for stuff. He's looking for Rapunzel, and he has shared the story of looking for Rapunzel, but he shared it as if it is just a fairy tale. He has told the fairy tale to King Michael. He has told the fairy tale to King Michael. I don't know how you pronounce it. He's told the fairy tale at the first court back in Let's. He told the fairy tale. And the people there were like, Well, what happened? Did the prince ever find the lady? Did this ever work out? And he's like, Well, I don't know. That's yet to come. So people started adding their own stuff to the tale. So bits and pieces of this fairy tale got out into the kingdoms. So when Brendan gets to King Nicholas's court, someone is talking about the story of Rapunzel. Someone is telling the tale, and they're telling the tale with some new nuance added to it. Kind of the way in our society, the Brothers Grimm added some stuff to it, and other people added stuff to the Rapunzel fairy tale, the Maiden in the Tower fairy tale. Stuff got added. Well, things are being added in this book. And I loved that. I thought that was so clever how Jessica wove that reality of stories morphing and changing. I love how she wove that reality into this little book. Okay, so we're at Pragan, and they're looking for Rapunzel, and they look in these towers, these abandoned towers that are in the kingdom, and they don't find her. She's not there. But while Brendan is out in that air and breathing the toxins, he gets sick. So he is ill. He's he is unconscious for a while. And so Sebastian and Philip get him, and they take him to the next stop. The next stop is King Salen's at Teraba. And while they're at Teraba, the letters that people have been writing to Brendan catch up with him. And some of those letters are from his sister, Rosemary. Okay, Rosemary is wanting to get married to Brendan's best friend, Theodore. They call him Teddy. So Teddy and Rosemary want to get married. And at one point, Brendan had given Theodore permission to ask for Rosemary's hand. He's like, Yeah, great, go for it. That sounds wonderful. And Brendan realizes that he had not considered that his sister might be falling in love with anyone. He had not considered asking her about her affairs of the heart. He had been so focused on his own affairs of the heart that he hadn't looked at anyone else's. And he's starting to think, wow, I shouldn't be so self-centered. I should be looking at others too. And another good message, another good idea that's packed into this story, and another part of Brendan going on his arc and becoming a better character and a better guy. He also starts to look at the character Philip, his security guy, his bodyguard. Philip has a wife and kids at home. And Brendan had never known that. He had never thought to ask. So he's learning more about Philip too. He's learning more about the people around him, and he's starting to ask questions of the people around him that are more like personal questions about them, about how they feel and about what they think. And he's starting to grow as a person in doing that. I'm like, Brendan, good for you. Good for you. So one of the letters that has come from Rosemary has a line in it where she's saying something about how Rapunzel is able to hold her own against this other ambassador. And he's like, wait, Rapunzel? Rapunzel's at court? She's there in the kingdom? And she is. She's a friend to Rosemary. Rosemary and Rapunzel are friends. And he's like, we're going home today, tonight. Saddle up the horses. Let's go. And so they do. They leave Teraba. They go back home. On the way back home, they're waylaid by someone who's trying to assassinate the prince. I mean, there are bad baddies still out there. Remember those barons that rose up against the folks at Let's? There's the Caledarians who are on the south border of our kingdom. Those guys are not nice and friendly. I mean, there's a lot of political intrigue just kind of in the background of this novel, just kind of sprinkled in once in a while mentioned, and those Caledarians show up because when Brendan gets back home and Sebastian, once again, this wise man tells him, hey, hang on, you should take a bath and change your clothes before you go see this woman that you're madly in love with, because you stink. You stink from being on the road. He's like, oh yeah, okay. So he takes a bath and he gets new clothes and he's ready to go and meet up with Rapunzel. And it goes not smoothly because he meets her and he's like, hey, I've been looking for you. And she's like, oh, I thought maybe you hated me because of the way we left things. It's like, I don't hate you. I love you and I missed you. And he went to his room to find the ring that he wanted to give her. And he can't find the ring. He's looking through all his stuff. So he doesn't even have the ring that he wants to put on her finger. But he's like, I wanted to marry you. And she's like, marry me? We've been apart for a year and you want to marry me? We're not even the same people anymore. And he's like, oh yes, we really are. You're still the woman I want to rescue. And she's angry about that. She's like, I don't need to be rescued. Let's see if I've got it for you. Okay. She looked down. I didn't know you were looking for me. I thought after the way I treated you that you would hate me. Hate you? Never. I took her hand, warming her cool fingers in mine. I'm so sorry for that, she continued. I shouldn't have kept quiet. I should have answered you when you were calling for me. I wanted to, but I was so confused. I'm so sorry. Rapunzel, I stopped her. Everything's all right now. We're together again, and I still love you. I have searched everywhere for you, trying to rescue you. Rescue me, she repeated, surprising me by pulling her hand out of mine. I rescued myself just fine, thank you. This was not what I expected to hear. Of course you did, I assured her. That much is clear. Come here, let's sit and you can tell me about it. We sat together on one of the stone benches by the path. I took her hand again as she began to speak. I was left all alone. At first, I didn't care because I was so mad at Granny Aunt. I heard her screaming at you and heard her lie that I wasn't there anymore. Why didn't you say anything? I asked her. I was there so many times after that, yelling for hours, but you kept silent. I know, she sighed. I was so confused. I didn't know what to do. I regret that I stayed quiet. After you stopped coming, it almost felt like you gave up on me. Okay, so she was irritated with him for thinking she needed to be rescued because she rescued herself. She took care of herself and she's empowered in that way. And he forgives her for being quiet and for not letting him know that she was still up in the tower when he was down there screaming her name and trying to get her attention. He forgives her because he loves her, but he forgives her for not letting him know that she was there and basically sending him off on this wild goose chase across the country, across the kingdoms for the better part of a year. He forgives her, so that's nice. And so they do decide. I mean, in the end, they decide to get married. It's a happily ever after. It is lovely, right? So, is that enough? Have I shared enough about the book? I enjoyed the story. It's a very quick read. It is young adult in nature, so it's a quick, fast read, and the themes and the messages are young adult but good and positive to share, to bring into your mind. Yeah, I enjoyed it. You guys, I can recommend Rapunzel's Prince by Jessica Kaye. I'm betting that I could recommend Rapunzel, the first book in this duology, in this companionship. I bet I could. I don't have it, so I don't know, but I bet I could recommend it because Rapunzel's Prince, seeing that Brendan went on this kind of arc that showed him growing as a person and turning into a good young man who was able to take on responsibilities and do the little quests that he needed to do, and just learn how to treat people and learn how to communicate with people. To see him learning those things was a good positive thing. And if Rapunzel was also learning those kinds of things in her companion book, then this is probably a very good duology to have for your young adult reader. Said enough. Thumbs up for Fractured Fairy Tales. Thumbs up for indie authored books that have good positive messages in them. Thank you so much for tuning in.